Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the July meeting of Leeds Council Exec Board. I'll remind everybody in the room that we are being webcast live, and welcome everybody in the public gallery and anybody watching online. So I'm going to turn to the formal items at the top of the agenda to start. So item 1, please.
Thanks, Chair. To confirm, there's been no appeals received for today's meeting.
Thank you. And item 2 on exempt information, please.
Yes, Chair. Appendix 3 to item 6, which is Leeds Sports Hub's Park Life Design and Cost Report for works at Woodhall and Green Park. Appendix 3 to item 15, which is Community Asset Transfer of Vickers Court to Health for All Leeds. And appendices 1 and 3 to item 16 regarding the acquisition of 83 to 8889 Kirkgate have all been designated as being exempt from publication under Access to Information Procedure Rule 10.43, and should the Board be agreeable, these appendices will be considered in private at the conclusion of the public part of the meeting.
Thank you. I will turn to item 3. Are there any late items, please?
No late items of business, Chair. No.
Thank you. I shall turn to the Board now and see if there's any declarations of interest. Councillor Lamb, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a declaration of interest. Just to make members aware, as I alerted you in advance, that I need to leave the meeting at 2:30 if we're still going, and Councillor Buckley will take over from the start of a new item after that.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. I can see Councillor Buckley sat raring to go. Open in the seats to the back. OK, I'm going to turn to item 5, which is the minutes, and check that everybody's happy with the minutes from the meeting in June. I don't see anybody indicating on that, so everybody's happy. That's great, thank you. So we'll move on to the papers on the agenda, and item 6, please, Councillor Arif.
Thank you, Chair. The report provides an update on the Park Life programme, previously reported to the Exec Board in September 2019. Park Life is the Football Foundation's national model for the provision and operation of third-generation artificial pitches, 3G AGPs, designed to address some of the national shortfall of pitches. The report provides details of 2 of the 3 sites within the programme, Woodhall and Green Park Sports Hub, which have undergone a complex procurement process and now in a position where they can be awarded for construction. The Matthew Murray site in Holbeck will be the subject of a later report once the proposals have developed further. Woodhall Sports Hub will consist of 3 full-sized floodlit AGPs for football and rugby use, together with parking, landscape work to create biodiversity habitats and play spaces for children. The site will also incorporate a sports pavilion building that will provide a cafe, meeting space, changing facilities and toilets. Similarly, the Greens Park Sports Hub will provide a further 3 full-size floodlit 3G AGPs alongside a large multi-use hard court for hockey, basketball and wheelchair sports. The site will also provide a children's play areas, biodiversity improvements and walking and running routes. The on-site sports pavilion building will provide a cafe facility, meeting space and changing rooms and toilets. Beyond reducing the shortfall of good quality pitches across the city, the delivery of Woodhall and Green Park Sports Hubs will bring significant benefits, including enabling equal access to sports facilities and providing good quality social spaces for local communities. Furthermore, a particular focus of the hubs will be to encourage more women's and girls' teams to use the facilities, as well as individuals who do not normally participate in sports, increasing the activity rate within the city to contribute towards our health and wellbeing ambitions. The works at Woodhall and Green Park are being procured by the Football Foundation framework. Funding for the programme will be a mixture of Football Foundation grant, LCC capital programme and Section 106 funding. Following a competitive tendering process, Lanosport NV with Cleveland Land Services have selected for the project as they achieved the highest quality threshold and lowest price for the works. Ward members of Carvely and Farsley and Temple Newsham, 2 of whom are here, have also been briefed on the projects at each key milestone and are supportive. Public consultation has been undertaken face-to-face alongside online consultation, and further consultation has been undertaken with potential local uses, accessibility sports groups and Leeds City Council staff. Once delivered, the Sports Hub will be managed by the National Football Trust, which is a non-for-profit organisation, and all surplus income will be reinvested into the Council's other outdoor sports facilities. There is no ongoing revenue implications for the Council throughout the 25-year lease period, as all revenues costs will be met by the operator. Chair, for completeness, we have received recent correspondence about the appropriateness of the materials being used for the playing pitches services. However, I can assure you that the issues raised have been previously considered during the planning phases of the programme and at plans panel. The materials being used for the playing pitch services are in line with the most recent Sports England guidance, and we have put measures in place to mitigate the environmental implications. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arif. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Certainly this is one that I will be supporting. I think it's a positive thing to be doing. So in the case of Woodhall, I'm aware that the residents have been waiting an awfully long time for this to come forward and get delivered, so it will be welcome to them that it is being. To address the point that you've raised at the end, like you and I'm sure other members, I have read very carefully the information that was sent. I'm very familiar with it because I've sat previously on plans panels that have considered this and balanced those issues, and I understand the concerns that people are coming with, but I also recognise the 10,000 matches that are lost every year in the West Riding because the pitches are not up to scratch because they're waterlogged or worn away. This doesn't entirely solve that problem, but it will certainly make it better and mean more of those matches for children, young people, particularly the growth in the women's game is really important as well. I'm proud that my ward has the highest level of women's participation in football and is the only ward in the city that has more women playing football than men. So get that in while I'm there. So yeah, overall it's a good thing. I think there are, as always with these things, local concerns about lighting and noise and things. I'm sure they can and will be addressed through planning. But overall, let's get on with it and get it delivered.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. And a good statistic there. Councillor Cooper, please.
Thank you, Leader. And I just want to really welcome this report to Executive Board as a Temple Newsham Ward member. A lot of our residents have been waiting a long time for this project to be developed out. Some 15 years that I'm aware of from the original plans of seeing football pitches in the very place that they're going to be built. And I too received information and briefings around the product that's being used and feel confident that while Sports England are still saying that it's the most suitable product to be using currently, then for all year pitches, all weather pitches that can be used. As ward members, we have received some requests from local residents because it's very close to some residential housing that obviously they were against it, but we've had a long and protracted process through the planning processes that have been undertaken, and the project has been approved to take place, and we'll be really pleased to see it. We're already getting requests from groups and individuals, please, when is it going to be open to use, because they've been waiting for it for such a long time. So I'm really pleased to see this report finally come forward, you know, for us to be able to get on with this work and get it delivered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. And I take it there's no more comments to make, and I also take it from the comments made everybody supports the recommendations on this paper. That's great. Thank you, everybody. And we'll move on to Councillor Hayden's papers, please, in item 7.
Thank you, Leader. The first one is the Education, Health and Care Plan Arrangements Update Report. So this report sets out the continuing work to improve the Education, Health and Care Plan process in Leeds. This is part of a wider transformation programme to deliver a system that is timely, transparent and centred on the needs of children and families. Like many councils, Leeds has seen significant demand pressures. Last year we issued over 900 new EHCPs, nearly 3 times the number issued in 2022. In the first 6 months of this year alone, we've received 1,267 requests for assessment, a 50% increase compared to the same period in 2024. Despite the financial pressures facing the Council, we've continued to invest in improving our ways of working. Steps are being taken to improve the service and timeliness of provision. Executive Board members will recall from previous updates that these include digital improvements, cultural shift, bringing in external support to tackle the EHCP backlog, a more streamlined process, and improved in communication with families. The transformation programme has seen a 117% increase in EHCPs completed in the first 3 months of 2025 compared to the same period last year. However, levels of demand continue to skyrocket, and although staff have worked incredibly hard, we, like many other local authorities across the country, have not been able to keep pace. We know there's still a long way to go, particularly around meeting statutory timescales. The work will continue to be informed at every stage by the views and experiences of children, young people and their families, as well as schools and other specialist settings, and will be underpinned by our principle of ensuring support is available for children and young people who need it most. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is such an important area for all of us, I'm sure, receiving casework from our residents. I get them from all over the city, sadly, now, with people who are having issues with children, young people with special educational needs, and getting the support they need in a timely manner. So anything we can do to make improvements has to be welcomed, and we've got a long way to go. I note and recognise and acknowledge the improvements that have been made, but there is an awful lot to do. A few questions that I've got. First of all, it's noted in the report that only 6.8% of EHCPs in Leeds are delivered within the 20-week time frame. My understanding is that is well below comparator councils' performance. So I'm hoping Councillor Hayden can explain why it's so much worse for families in Leeds than it is in comparable cities, all of whom are facing the same national context. See, one of the big unwritten things within this is we're waiting, as we were with the previous government, to be fair, we're waiting for this government to set out what they're going to do around this agenda. The noises that are coming out are very concerning, so I'm keen to know what the council's position is and what lobbying we're doing. So it's been reported in the Law Society Gazette that they've learned that the judges of the Special Educational Needs and Disability Tribunal have been told their services would not be needed in the future. And there is lots of anecdotal evidence that the government are going to stop EHCPs altogether. There's also lots in the press of councils lobbying the government against this. So can someone confirm if Leeds is part of that lobbying and what our position is on that matter? And the final question for now, I think for me one of the big mistakes that's been made, which is not exclusive to Leeds, is the withdrawal of FFI funding for inclusion, because it's created a cliff edge where pretty much you've got either an EHCP or nothing. And I think we need to revisit that, and that's part of the lobbying that should be going to government to say, actually, in a lot of cases, and a lot of cases that have escalated a long way in this council, a little bit of support to help someone stay in mainstream would have been the appropriate outcome. But because that wasn't available, they've ended up going through very long battles with the council, and we find ourselves spending lots and lots of money for a level of support that perhaps isn't always warranted. And that means people that really need it don't get everything that they need because they're also having to battle. And it's a system that isn't working. I think there's a lot we could do in the council. We'll come on to some of it later on. The communication, as I've said many times here, is often the issue. That's nothing to do with the national context. That's just our culture here. The emails go unanswered, people go on holiday or off sick, nobody picks up their workload, and families are left hanging on and waiting, and that's just not acceptable, and that's something we could fix quite quickly. So a few points for Councillor Hayden to address there, please.
Thank you. What I'll do is I'll bring in Julie, see if there's any comments Julie wants to make, and then I'll bring in Councillor Hayden, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, there's a number of comments that I would make in response to Councillor Lamb. In terms of the timeliness, we would all accept that timeliness is not where we want it to be in Leeds, and we've been very clear about that as part of our ongoing improvement plan. One of the things that's exacerbated that for us, and which is distinct and different for Leeds, as you have referenced, Councillor Lamb, is the approach that we've had historically to funding for inclusion, FFI. That was hailed when we had our previous SEND inspection, I think back in 2016, as innovative and forward-thinking best practice. What funding for inclusion enabled us to do was to provide funding to schools, to settings, to support children at the earliest opportunity who may have emerging additional needs. Unfortunately, that is it doesn't fit with the current legislation and the current statutory framework within which we have to operate. What that's meant is that we are having to review our funding for inclusion, which is set out in today's report. And so that has added to the pressures that we already have in the system, because all of those children previously in receipt of funding for inclusion now have to be considered in terms of assessment. So that is very distinct, it is very different for Leeds, and it has added to the pressures, and therein it does impact on our timeliness. Absolutely, that was about early intervention and prevention. And, I'm sure that when we do have the white paper in the autumn, that there will be a huge focus on early intervention and prevention. We do have a positive story to tell in Leeds, around our early help and our family help. We have increased our family hubs. So previously we had 3 family hubs. We've now extended those to 7. We've also introduced SEND coordinators into each of our hubs, and that's absolutely in response to what parents and carers were telling us in the city, parents and carers who do have children with complex needs and disabilities, that at times it's difficult to navigate the system. And again, that's not something which is felt just by parents and carers in Leeds. Again, this is a national issue. However, what we have done in Leeds is expand our hubs, as I've said, place that additional SEND support within those hubs. And, we're receiving good, positive feedback about those developments. In terms of our ongoing conversations, at a regional level, at a national level, I meet with the DFE regularly as a group of directors across Yorkshire and Humberside. We also meet with the DFE and others, and we are, our voices are heard in terms of our view for the future, the challenges that we do have in the system, but also it's important for us in our roles to be talking about some of the solutions, and they are absolutely heard. I've not got no doubt about that. The paper does set out a range of ongoing improvement work. One aspect of that is digitalisation, so certainly the ability now for parents and carers, for our professionals in settings to be able to see where they are at in terms of that 20-week process is much, much improved. We have a way to go. This paper is an update in terms of the improvements that we've made, but we're all very clear. We do have a way to go, but we're absolutely committed to continuing, to keep our foot on the pedal and to do all that we can to give the best service that we can to children and families.
Thank you. Councillor Hayden, please.
Just to address the questions posed by Councillor Lamb. 6% is not acceptable. There is a time lag with that statistic, and the way the time it's reported, and hopefully that will be an improved figure next time it's reported. We made a decision that we would tackle the longest waits first, and morally I think that is absolutely the right decision. That means that our percentage figure will not be improved as fast as we would like it, because it will never improve because of way they were over the 20 weeks anyway. But I believe it's absolutely the right thing to do, that those waiting the longest should have been tackled first, and we made that decision. So we could have made a decision to focus on the new ones coming in and make sure our percentage then rose, but I didn't. We all didn't think that that was the right decision, and actually, children and their needs and their families' needs should be at the heart of what we were doing. There's been an awful lot of improvement. We know there's a lot to go. FFI still exists in Leeds, so it will never be withdrawn from a child who is receiving it. And they will all go through the process of going on to EHCPs, which are a statutory requirement. FFI was not made, it was innovative by Leeds City Council, and I think an absolutely right thing to do, as you say, getting the help into schools really quickly when a child needs it, and the school needs the extra funding to do that work with the child and support the child and support staff. But the last government made EHCPs a statutory, and we need to recognise that, and we have done, and so we're doing the transfer. But so that means that any children coming into the SEND system will need to apply for an EHCP, but any child that was before that receives FFI now will continue to receive it until they get an EHCP. In terms of the government and what we've inherited, the select committee showed that this is a broken system. It's nationally broken. Yes, we are a big city. We're a complex city. We're the second biggest city in the country, second biggest LA in the country. I'm not giving that as an excuse, but it does mean that the complexity of our system is different to our neighbours. But we have been working really, really hard, especially around the communication and the portal that we have. I mean, it's been a tireless work from the team, and a massive leap in productivity in terms of producing EHCPs. And I want to really thank them all, because, you know, it's really, really difficult. This broken system needs addressing. It needs improvement. It needs work, and the government are on that. I'm not going to comment on anecdotal and evidence or rumours or what somebody said to whoever. And we'll wait and see. But we are we need to see what the white paper in the autumn produces. But the government are talking. They're listening. We are having conversations with them. In Leeds, around early help, we've got a really good story to tell, and across the city, and I am talking in conversations with ministers and the Secretary of State about the need that we have in terms of early help and getting help to pupils as early as possible. But we can't not address this broken system. There has to be something. We have to put it right. We have to fix it, and we have to make it better, because that's what our families and our children particularly deserve. And I'm not going to criticise the government for assessing the situation, seeing, having inquiries, and then coming up with proposals to break that system. But I'm in conversations with them, and I know, and I have confidence that children will be, and their families will be, at the heart of any changes made.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Lamb, please.
Thank you. If I just come back on 2 points that I don't think were addressed. So first, I wouldn't expect you to criticise the government on this at this stage, because we don't know what the plan is yet. However, the concerns coming out and the noises and leaked documents from the government do say that because the savings weren't made from welfare, that they're going to look to this instead, which is very concerning. Henry Shelford, who's the Chief Exec of ADHD UK, said, "There's no doubt that the EHCP system could be better, but I think following what's happened with PIP and seeing what's happened with ADHD and the NHS, it's very hard to trust that the government is going to actually put something in that's better and not use any change as an excuse to withdraw support so that it can cut costs." I think probably we both agree with that, or certainly the last part of it. So my question was about what this council's view is and what lobbying we are doing. So are we committed to making EHCPs better, not getting rid of them? And the other bit that wasn't answered was around the 6.8%. Why is it worse in Leeds than in other comparable councils?
Thank you. If I can help out on your first question, Councillor Lamb, there's a white paper coming in the autumn. We'll have a good look at that and we'll respond accordingly. I think that's going to be our approach. As we've already talked about on this item, you know, we've had a really good record here on using FFI funding to support people before EHCPs. We've got some great experience there we can reflect on and look at, and that will be the approach. That'll be the approach we will take. It's very difficult to lobby on the back of third-party comments or unsourced reports in media and things like that, but we will be, you know, really keen to get engaged in that process. It's really encouraging, as Councillor Hayden says, you know, we've got a government that's prepared to work with us now. We've got a lot of experience around inclusion, and we'll work on we'll work on that basis, and if the proposals come forward we don't believe are helpful, then we will respond accordingly, but we haven't seen them yet, and we could spend all afternoon reading out unsourced media comments and things like that, but I don't think it's going to take us forward on this. But I do want to reassure you, when we do have some firm proposals, we will respond accordingly. Julie, would you like to come in, please?
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, just to respond again in relation to our timeliness figure, Councillor Lamb. So again, you know, this does relate to the broken system that we do have in terms of recruitment, retention, challenges. Again, not just an issue for Leeds, but an issue for, I think, every local authority across the country. I think the things that do differentiate Leeds from other local authorities, however, are the scale and the number. You know, we can talk about percentages, but actually when you look at the sheer number of children that we do have in the city, and as Councillor Hayden rightly says, you know, the second biggest city in the country, that is a factor. The fact that we've seen, you know, since between 2016 and 2024, a 263% increase in requests for assessment. 263% increase. You know, that is very, very different from other local authorities. And when that is then compounded by the additional pressures of us having to look to transfer children who are currently in receipt of FFI, other local authorities did not have FFI. So that's a very distinct issue for Leeds, and that has created a significant additional pressure in terms of demand. As I've said, in 2016, funding for inclusion was hailed by CQC and Ofsted as an example of best practice, because the whole philosophy and concept was about passporting funding as early as possible to settings that needed it. We have found ourselves in a position where that could not be maintained, but that has absolutely added to the pressure, added to the demand, and had that, you know, additional negative impact in terms of our timeliness. However, what we can see is that with the additional resource that we have been able to put in, the improved picture that we do have in terms of recruitment and significantly retention, we are being able to assess more children. We do have more children than ever before in the city who do have EHCP plans, and that is the trajectory that we will continue on.
Thank you, Julie. Does anybody else want to come in? I don't see anybody, so I'm going to turn to the recommendations on page 55 and see if everybody is happy with those recommendations. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, I'm going to reserve my position on the three recommendations.
Okay, thank you. So we'll record Councillor Lamb's position. I take it everybody else is happy with the recommendations. Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to item 8, please, Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Leader. So this is the school organisation and area-based planning. And this report sets out a refreshed strategy for school place planning in Leeds, one shaped by demographic shifts, increasing financial pressure on schools due to surplus capacity, and the complex local landscape of education providers across the city. Local authorities remain responsible for managing the sufficiency of school places. We, like many local authorities, face falling birth rates and rising complexity in different parts of the city. Yet over the past decade, many of the powers needed to shape provision over admissions, exclusions and school organisation have been steadily removed, making coherent planning more difficult than ever. Following a review, this strategy introduces a new area-based planning model led by new area-based planning board and is designed to engage all types of schools, academy and foundation trusts, as well as our community schools and different members of the school communities and unions as well, all being involved at in terms of planning locally to identify challenges and develop solutions together. It places a strong emphasis on early, inclusive and robust equality impact assessments and begins with pilot projects in Edinburgh and Rothwell starting this autumn term. It reflects our commitment to shaping a resilient school estate that meets the needs of every community and supports improved outcomes for children across Leeds. It builds on the lessons learned work brought to scrutiny last month and reaffirms our commitment to learning, transparency and inclusive leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Lamb.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So there were two words missing from that introduction. One was Queensway and the second was sorry. Again. And of course this is here because of the debacle of Queensway and the uncertainty and misery that this council has inflicted on the staff, pupils, teachers and community of that school. And there is no comfort for them in this paper because all this tells them is they have another year of uncertainty and misery and not knowing what the future looks like for their school and their community. What lessons we've learned, I'm not clear from this. We've produced a lot of words, but I have zero confidence that this is the response which is going to make it better going forwards or give any clarity to any of those people. It seems the response to all of that is to make the system less democratic. So there will be less democratic input into the process. There will be less scrutiny into the process. My suggestion with this is actually there is a lot more work that needs to be done. I feel it needs to go back to scrutiny. I couldn't support any one of these recommendations, and to be fair, I made a similar point when the other members of the Executive Board originally approved the decision to close Queensway, which they then had to rescind, to publish a statutory notice, which you then all had to rescind. And I said then, based on the information in front of you, I don't know how you could possibly support it. You did it anyway. Well, I'd say the same thing again. Based on the information before you today, I don't know how you could possibly support these recommendations because they've been put together at haste as a knee-jerk reaction to something that we got horribly wrong. What I would like to know, I know it's not available because I asked for it on Thursday and I'm told I'll get the information tomorrow, how many surplus spaces we have in the city at the moment. And if someone could correct me if I'm wrong, I understand we have a shortfall of 800 special educational needs places. And again, if someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we now spend more money sending children with special educational needs outside of the authority area than the entire budget of special educational needs delivered inside. And I think there is part of the solution. In the case of Queensway, which was quite specialised at delivering special educational needs provision, the right thing to do would have been to work with that school to look at how an alternative provision could have been created. And that's something that could have been done quietly, calmly and collaboratively, rather than the debacle that they've had to go through. Yeah, in summary, I don't think this is hitting the nail on the head at all. I won't be supporting it. And my advice to the rest of the Executive Board is we should be sending this to scrutiny to do some proper work and come back with some proposals which are about doing things with communities and schools, not doing things to them.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Who'd like to come in? Julie, please.
Thank you, Leader. So really, this whole approach, the school organisation and area-based planning approach, is very much about a collaborative approach. It's about co-producing, it is about working with not only our education settings, our learning settings, but with parents, with carers, listening to young people, and also with local communities. There's actually been a lot of conversation across our right across the whole of the education landscape in Leeds about this approach, and there is support for it because I think it does reflect the partnership approach that we do have in Leeds, and I think it does reflect there has been learning. I think in terms of the role of scrutiny, the Children and Families Scrutiny Board have discussed this matter and this approach on a number of occasions now, and that's been very transparent and very helpful, and that will continue, and we're committed to that. Really, when we're talking about children in Leeds and the education of children in Leeds and sufficiency, we're talking about all children. And again, I think the benefit of taking this holistic approach, looking at specific geographic areas in the city, will be to look at the sufficiency of places for all children, including children who do have special educational needs and disability. And I think, this will give us, in my view, it is a real strength, and it's a real positive factor of this approach, that we will be taking that holistic view in relation to the needs of all children within a geographic location. So for me, it's a really positive move forward. I think there is learning that has that we've had previously, which I think is reflected in the report and in the approach that we want to take. Thank you.
Councillor Hayden, please.
Thank you. This will actually, there is very, having a local area planning board will include local people, the educators in those communities, where there is no mechanism for that now. What we've got is a fragmented school system that was developed under the last government, where each school or multi-academy trust runs and controls their own schools, and where you get really good multi-academy trust, they will work with the community and they will respond to it. But that's not always the case. As I said in my introduction, we don't have the levers. Even now, we wouldn't legally have we wouldn't have any powers to compel schools to do what the area-based approach will take. But this is us stepping up and saying we want to talk with and involve with local people in these two, starting with these two pilot areas. This has been under development for a number of months now, due to the situation we have with falling birth rates and demographic shifts within the city. In terms of the 800 send, that's been identified by Leeds City Council as needing between 600 and 800 send places, through things like the extension and rebuild of Broomfield Silk and the South Silk. We are, along with other examples, we are up to 400 places of that 600 to 800. So we are on with developing buildings and converting places so that we meet that need. So we're already halfway there of the top estimate. With the white paper coming out in the autumn, what the government is talking about is send hubs within mainstream schools and resourcing and training going into mainstream schools. Queensway is a mainstream school, and there is a need for send provision in that area, and we will see what comes out of the area planning approach. All schools in our city do a remarkable job with our children with special educational needs and disabilities. What they need is the resource and the training and the time to fully support those children and their families. Not all children will need specialist provision, And if specialism can be taken into mainstream schools, then that would be even better outcomes for our children. So we are on it. We are halfway there with that. With the and Broomfield came to the exec board, as Councillor Lamb will remember. We identify the problems and we come up with solutions to the problems. If those solutions are not enough or there's problems with them, then we will change and we will respond accordingly. And we will involve scrutiny, as we have done up to now at every stage.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Lamb, please.
Thank you. Yeah, just a correction that it was the last Labour government that began the Academies programme, expanded on under the previous Conservative government. The key issue here, though, is what you just highlighted, Councillor Hayden. In these areas where there are academies, you don't have the power to direct them. So how is this actually going to work in practice when you bring a group together, however willing the academies may be? If you decide you need to close a school, the academies are not going to volunteer and say, OK, then we'll close, and that suddenly limits your options. So how is this going to work in practice?
It'll work in practice because we're incredibly good at partnership working, and thank you for sniggering. That's really appreciated. We are good, as several reports have set out, very good at partnership working. Yes, you're absolutely right. The Conservative government took away our legal powers to direct any school, yet leaving us with the responsibility of sufficiency in our city. So we're in a bit of a difficult situation, and this is our way, working with the schools who, because of the falling birth rate and because of the lack of investment over the last 10, 14 years, have seen their budgets dissipate and therefore are willing to work together. That's what they're telling us, and I have every faith in them to come up with a citywide solution, or at least an area-wide solution, because they're all suffering after 14 years of Conservative government.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Julie, please.
Thank you, Leader. Just to reflect in a sense what Councillor Hayden's just said, I think what we do have in Leeds is a real commitment to a whole system approach, and the recognition, the acknowledgement that, regardless of, whether you're an academy, whether you're a state funded school, these are Leeds children, and that we have a responsibility collectively as a whole system leadership for the children in Leeds. I think the other issue is that this is going to be an issue which will affect all schools, regardless of the nature of those schools. The report sets out that we've only got 78% of primary schools who will have or do have a full reception allocation for this September. So it's not an issue for any one particular school, it's an issue for the whole city. And there is support, there is ownership, for this approach, and recognising that we have to come together, we have to collaborate, we have to support each other to find the solutions. And that is something that we do have a good track record of doing in Leeds.
Thank you. Dan, please.
Thank you. I don't know if you can hear me. I wanted to just make sure that it was really clear in relation to Queensway in particular that because it was subject to an academy order for a couple of years following an inadequate judgment, it was only very recently that the local authority in Leeds was able to start to do and make changes in relation to it. And also you can't just convert one type of school into another school. You have to go through a closure process first and then establish a new school in the same place. So I think it's just important for factual accuracy that that's recorded.
Thank you, Dan. I don't see anybody else wanting to come in on this item, so I'm going to turn to the recommendations on page 79 and see how people want to... I'm going to check Councillor Lamb's position, as you did speak about it during earlier in the item.
As I said, I can't support this, so voting against.
Okay, so we'll note Councillor Lamb's position, and I take it everybody else is happy with the paper. That's great, thank you. So we'll move on to item 9, which is one of my two papers on the agenda today, which is the Leeds Ambitions Refresh of the Best City Ambition. This came to Executive Board early this year to start the process and the consultation on how we move forward in terms of how we work across the city with our partners and how we set out the ambitions we have for the city. As an outcome of that, we've had loads of consultation with people. As an outcome of that, the names have changed slightly to make it the Leeds ambitions, to reflect the fact that these are covering not just ourselves as a council, but the whole city, including our partners in the public sector, the voluntary third and faith sector, the private sector, and our residents in this as well. We've looked at including a community level as work as well as one of the main objectives of the way we work. Obviously, I think that's part of the work we've done here as a community committees review. As Councillor Harlander said, we've made some progress on that and still work to look on that going forward, and also to try and reflect again with some of the partners we work with around the real importance of in a very big and complicated city working with our communities. The recommendation is once it's gone through today, then it'll be taken to full council in September. I'll leave my opening comments there and see if there's any more comments on this paper. Councillor Lamb, please.
Thank you. You probably already know what the questions are, because I usually ask the same things on these ones, but I'll ask them again anyway, so I don't disappoint you. So it's around metrics to start with, and what I suppose my question to you, councillors, will be if, to your residents in Kippax or mine in Wetherby in 5 years from now, what are the 3 things that we could point to that will be better in their lives in 5 years' time?
Well, if I had a crystal ball, which I don't, I think this is about how services work together. I think this is about how we look at the outcomes to bring forward, and you're absolutely right. There's information in the paper about the measurement of those, and it's about how we look at what moves forward. I mean, no one's got a crystal ball to say what's going to happen in 5 years' time, but I think it is really good that we look at, like I say, these ways of working, and look about how we can sort of improve the city moving forwards.
Yeah, so I think for me, I suppose my criticism, constructive criticism, would be it feels more about process than outcome. And I'd like to see what the outcomes are that we're trying to achieve for people, because we're here to try and make lives better for our residents. And so that's really the challenge. What will be better as a result of this ambition? And the other point is around poverty. It's quite right that we have an ambition to reduce poverty in the city, particularly in the poorest parts of the city. The administration members have pointed out consistently over the last 14 years that we don't have the levers to control it, and it's down to what happens in government. It must be depressing to you, as it is to me, that under the new government poverty has got worse and is projected to get even worse still. So given that we don't have the levers, how is this ambition going to address that?
Thank you. We have some levers we can do. We've had the service we do. We support lots of people in the city. I'll give the example of being able to find over £1 million worth of pensioner credit for people by putting the resources into that. That's just one example of the work we can do around that. It's a way we can provide services in the city. I think it's a way we can work with our partners in the private sector about bringing good jobs in the city, so people have the opportunity to earn and earn more in there. So I know you love speaking for us, Alan. On this occasion, we can speak for ourselves. I do think we have some levers for how we can address poverty in the city, how we can support people, how we can get people into good jobs, how we can get people into better quality housing. So there are things we can do. We don't have every lever. I think that's something everybody accepts around the table. We do have some, and like I say, we've got some great examples of how they are working. Ed, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Just a couple of details in the papers which I hope might answer some of the questions. At 7E on the cover paper, we talk about the importance of a revised outcomes framework that has proper metrics in there. So we do take the point, and it's important that we are able to spell out very clearly, what impact we're trying to make. I'd also just bring your attention to at the top of page 125. There's a bullet point on what's happened when we brought statutory services together with voluntary and community sector, where we reduced the number of Leeds neighbourhoods featuring in the bottom 1% of the English indices of deprivation. I think there are some outcome measures, that, and this being one, that you can point at, that are not just about the provision of direct funding, but about what happens when services work better. That's one example. We are going to look for others. But I think when we think about poverty and inequality, it is about the direct delivery of services, but also how those services work. And for us, as we've discussed, as a council, how services work together is really important.
Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I think this bit... obviously, I was genuinely trying to be constructive, but this is particularly trying to be constructive. I think one of the challenges is around the language that we use, and I seem to mention it more and more, but things tend to be in officer speak. My point is this should be in resident speak, so that they can actually, because you just described the metric in words that I wouldn't even attempt to repeat, Ed, trying to tell a resident in Hare Hills or Crossgates what that actually means for their life. It is, to me, that's what we have to try and capture in here, in the language that we use, as much as the metrics.
I think, you know, there's many different ways we work with people in the city. You know, we're all of us sat around the table who are councillors, represent our wards which we're elected to on the mandate do, and that's really important work to make, or certainly some of us work to improve facilities and services on the ground for our residents, and you know, we're out all the time. I'm sure you are in your ward, as we are, working with residents on that. We have the next level up, we have the community committee network, where we really try and engage with residents as well, around how services affect them. So I think it's getting that level right for where we do work with people, in the city. I think it is something that we want to get out there and do. If by officer language you mean a type of precise language, I think that's important for the decisions. I think that's important for the decisions we take there. But how that works in the city, you're right. It has to be first of all, has to make a difference on the ground. Secondly, people have to understand about how it works. Councillor Harlan, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just to make mention of the work that we're doing with the Poverty Truth Commission, of the deeper listening exercise, which is working with community commissioners on how we engage with our residents more openly and frequently. So that's a piece of work that's ongoing, that's officers at chief officer level and myself, and it's a really good piece of work, but we are working with residents from across the city.
Thank you. Are there any more comments? Mariana, please.
Yeah, just to add a couple, thanks, Leader. I think page 44 is the list, really, of the indicators that we will be proposing, which largely are lifted from the marmot work that has been done in the city, but not all. A lot of those are focused around narrowing the gap or poverty, and the scorecard that Ed mentioned will, make more proposals on those, but they're the things that we would expect to see change at the end of the life cycle. And we always try and take the feedback and the point about language, but I think we've also tried to be really clear in this. This isn't intended as a document for the public directly. The intended audience for this is all the organisations in the city, particularly the big organisations in the city, so that it can inform their organisational plans. But as always, we did take that feedback from scrutiny. We'll always try and refine it further. But I think we do want to keep the purpose of the audience clear with this. As I say, it's not really intended directly for the public. But Donna and colleagues can help us make sure that our comms, where we are communicating directly with the public, is targeted appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arif, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I really welcome this. I think this is really important, and it's about looking ahead as well, and building on some of the really good things we've done. Councillor Lamb, you talked about Hare Hills. Just to take couple of examples out, selective licensing. It's made a huge difference in terms of the quality of housing for some of my most vulnerable residents, and I know there's plans to hopefully expand that out in the rest of the city as well, in some areas. Marmot City, wide determinants of health, that's really important, looking at our parks, looking at our roads and various different things. The work Public Health do with the community of impact assessment and the support that they've given us in Hare Hills in terms of the influx of off licences that we had in Hare Hills, and we now are at a place where that's getting better. And I think you're right, in terms of that public language, but every area is different, and I think this report does recognise that, and different areas have different needs. And I think, you know, the world we are in now, the next decade is going to be different. And, you know, as a council, I'm really proud that we're ready and geared up to respond to that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any more comments on this paper? Okay, I'm going to turn to the recommendations on page 113, and I'll take it from the comments everybody's happy with. The Councillor Lamb.
I'll reserve my position for now until the council meeting.
Okay, look forward to seeing what you say in the council meeting. But with that, I take it everybody else is happy with the paper. That's great. We're on to item 10, which is the annual corporate risk report. This report, the title speaks for itself in terms of what it is reporting to Executive Board about the risks that the council faces. There is loads of information in there around what the risks are and how we try and mitigate them. But I do think it's important to say as well in introducing this paper that I think it is important that this information comes to Executive Board every year. And I know it goes to scrutiny boards as well, and we work on it at Exec Board. We know it's as we've heard already on some of the Exec Board papers we've had today, it's a complicated and challenging world that we work in. As a council, we do try and we do in that world try and work in a way to deliver services within the budget we have, but we also recognise there's huge risks that both face ourselves as an organisation, other organisations and people that live in Leeds. And this paper, in great detail, is about how we try and identify those risks, manage and mitigate them where we can, and make sure we're aware when we do need a response that response is in place. And with that, I will see if there's any comments on the paper, please. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, well, just echo your comments at the start, Councillor Lewis, that it is very welcome that this is open and transparent. And then there's a duty on us to be responsible with it, because it can look very alarming when you read through some of the things. The key bit is, right, well, what are we doing about it then? And the fact that it's here being considered and that there are then plans in place to do things should give comfort. It doesn't mean bad things aren't going to happen. It's not always in our gift, but in most cases we're ready, have a plan, and things are in place. The one area I would just like some additional comment and reassurance on is the indicator around the risk of failure of the care market, which is ranked as very high. It's obviously a concern we've raised and talked about before, and I remain concerned that it isn't sustainable for us to be paying, I'm sure the figures have changed now, but when it was budget time, roughly we're paying £678 a week for a service that costs £900. And we have had letters and correspondence directly from representatives of the social care providers to say that risk is very real, and I'm not convinced yet that we've addressed it adequately. So I would like some comfort that we are not going to see market failures in the city.
Thank you. Caroline, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Lamb. Just to provide some reassurance, we have regular and frequent discussions with our care market, both in terms of as a network, so through the Leeds Care Association and the Home Care Provider Alliance. We are meeting with them, so we ensure that we continue to be engaged and hear any concerns that they have. In addition to that, we constantly track our ability to source packages of care and also placements in care homes, and to date we are not experiencing any difficulties in any addition to those that we've experienced previously. So for a very small number of people we have to occasionally place out of area, and that is because those individuals have very specific needs, or because that's through choice and for individuals to be nearer their families. But overall, we are not having difficulties in securing packages of all of care, placements, supported living services within the Leeds area. We also do work regionally to look at whether there are any specific opportunities to commission on a broader scale, particularly for specialist services, because this concern is across the board. It's across the country, with providers saying that their costs are escalating, and more recently as a result of the changes around employers' national insurance contributions. We don't think that the problem is not real, or that it's not gone away, or that it's gone away. We're very mindful, but in reality, at this moment in time, we're not seeing any particular market pressures.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to comment on this paper? Okay, I shall turn to recommendations on page 161. And I take it from the comments everybody is happy with those recommendations. That's great. And we'll turn to Councillor Cooper's papers and item 11, please.
Thank you, Leader, and hopefully with this report we may be able to answer some of Councillor Lamb's earlier questions about the difference that we're making to residents in his ward, my ward, and indeed every other ward in the city. I'm really pleased to present the annual performance report, and it really updates Executive Board on a number of key performance indicators covering all of the directorates within the Council, and it builds on our approach to being open and transparent by bringing reports regularly, not just annually. So we're seeing this annual report come here, but Scrutiny see performance reports at a regular basis on all the matters that are relevant to their each individual scrutinies as well, and often have comments, suggestions, ideas, and how we can take things forward. And indeed have done so very recently, including this week, when I attended the Strategy and Resources scrutiny, for instance. I think that I'd like to highlight a few of the key points within the report, but I would suggest to members to take a read of the actual performance report. It is really detailed in a lot of areas of work that we undertake in the city, and a lot of the services that we're delivering, and you can really see where we're making a difference. Indeed, there are still challenges that remain, and we recognise those as well. But a few things I suppose to point out. So within adults and health, we've got improvements to waiting times that have been seen during the last year, and we've introduced the Waiting Well protocol, making sure people are safe and supported while they wait for services. In children's and families, work has been undertaken to diversify our residential care portfolio, including small group living homes. We've also introduced multi-agency family hubs in communities across the city and facilitated family reunification where possible. In city development, we've seen growth in new homes that's seen a positive performance well over the targeted position of last year, and we've seen 788 new affordable homes built over the past 5 years. In public health, rates of obesity in reception children and Year 6 children continue to decline after COVID, and for Year 6 children this decrease is most rapid in the most deprived parts of the city. This is really good news and worth highlighting. Better health in children is the first part in narrowing the gap between the most deprived and the least deprived. I think some of the highlights of the year, I have to say, has been the introduction of glass recycling in the green bins, and I know that my residents are certainly pleased about the introduction of that, and that's impacted on them in a positive way. And I were really pleased to see one of the highlights of the report being the work that we've done to recognise inspirational women within the council chamber that I know all executive board supported, so I'm really pleased to see that in there. Like I said, we've we know we still need to improve in other areas as well, and that's also detailed well within the report. And there are areas, like we've discussed earlier, around HCP levels, levels of knee and sickness levels within the council where we know we need to improve on. But I'm really proud that we bring these reports to Executive Board and to Scrutiny Board so that they can be aired, they can be spoken about in the light and not in the dark. You know, they're in front of the public to decide. But if I can just point you, there is a graphic within the report itself, and I urge all of you to look at it. And it does, with the second largest local authority in England, we have 830,000 people living within our city. And some of the amazing work that's undertaken by many of our services and staff is highlighted within that graphic. It's a couple of pages into the report, and I urge you to just look at that and share that with your residents and see how that's impacted on them. Thank you, Leader. I'll leave it there for questions.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Are there any comments? Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Again, it's welcome that this comes so publicly to Executive Board with all of the information, all of the regular input to scrutiny. I certainly endorse that. It's a reminder of just how many aspects of people's lives the council touches every day. And that should be a reminder to us all how important it is to get the basics right. And so that leads me into one or two areas where there is room for improvement, and in some cases where it isn't highlighted in the report. So I'm sure Councillor Rafiq will not be surprised that I want to talk about the refuse service and the figure which comes every year that says we collect 99.81% of bins on time. It won't surprise you, Councillor Rafiq, I simply do not think that is accurate. And you will know from the number of emails I've been copying you into of late, which I've only started copying you in because I'm so exasperated on behalf of my residents at the poor performance. I've checked with my colleagues and people in other parties, is it just us that's affected? And I'm told no, they have something similar. And I know I will be told this is the standard for how it's done across the country. But if you can remind us again the way that this is measured, my understanding is we measure a missed bin if a resident rings up and reports it missed. If a member on their behalf rings up and reports it missed, that's not counted. If it comes on the end of day report and we know we missed it, it's not counted. So what exactly do we count? Because I just simply cannot accept this figure as being accurate.
Thank you. Councillor Rafiq, please.
Happy to come back on this. I think you've actually, Councillor Lamb, you've been provided given a written response how we actually report the missed bin collections. The end of day report is, you know, there are maybe a very small, with the exception of very small numbers which aren't on the end of day report. We've got one of the best model for end of day report. It's not legal requirement, but it's something through scrutiny over the years we've improved, and you'll find that 80% of the times there's a very valid reason. In fact, you know, all the reasons, but 80% is vehicle obstruction, road works. There are some others where there's a vehicle breakdown or something, or over-presentation during the summer, but 80 to 90% times there are very valid reasons. Most mild roads, which is beyond the control of some of very experienced refuse crews who actually, I mean, it's difficult for anybody to sometimes navigate vehicles through narrow streets which aren't built for cars to be built on both, parked on both sides. I think rather than, you know, you've actually raised it, and, you know, John and I've been responding to it. There are very, very small numbers. You know, there's a few houses. In your case, you've actually raised even one house being missed. There's a usual policy, if one house missed, we don't go back, but the crews have been doing everything to do that. But I think you're just hell-bent on criticising the crews, despite the work we've done with yourselves, with your ward. I mean, there are people, ward members around here, you know, who actually, you know, will not agree with you because we all represent wards. There are some logistical issues, but I'm going to reiterate here in this meeting that our refuse service is one of the best in the country. Our collection rates are over 99%. Yes, when it comes to reporting, it's based on residents reporting. The end of the day report doesn't include it because we know it's missed and we go back and collect it within 48 hours, and 95% of the times, if not higher, we go back and collect it and go over the board. Sometimes refuse could be drugging out wheelie bins because they can't get into a narrow street or cul-de-sac. So I think rather than, you know, for a change, kind of giving a pat on the back, some of the hardest workers out on the front are refuse workers working all year round in difficult conditions. I think you keep on going back and making really a point, I think, which they don't deserve.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, please.
If I might add some clarity here as well for Executive Board and some information about our refuse service, which does a fantastic job, I have to say. So just some information really. We collect 310,000 tonnes of waste a year, of which 36.2% of that waste is recycled. 62.9% of waste used as refuse is refuse-derived fuel to power the Leeds Pipes network. The Leeds Pipes network has used the city's non-recyclable waste to produce 32,000 megawatts of heat and helped to reduce the city's carbon footprint by 6,500 tonnes. Well, I, for one, think that's worth applauding.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yes, thank you. The point I actually made wasn't addressed by anybody there, of course, which is I don't believe the way of measuring this is accurate. And if you don't measure accurately, you can't fix the problem. And you would struggle to come to my ward and persuade people that the refuse service is working as well as it could. I'm not criticising, and I've never criticised the crews. Not at any point have I done that. I'm criticising the way of measuring and the fact the organisation isn't working. The solutions, actually, we've worked very well with crews in my ward, and we've met on site several times, agreed actions that needed to be taken, which were passed up to you, and then you didn't do it. So the problem, Councillor Rafiq, is you, but we'll have to agree to disagree on that one. So if we can move on to business startups, which is something, Councillor Lewis, we also talked about in Wyker earlier in the year, which was concerning when it was presented that the number of business startups have declined in the city and in the region, and the hope was that that was a blip. The evidence from here is that it's not a blip, that fewer people are starting businesses in our city. So can you tell us, is the problem that people don't want to do business under this administration, or is it a national problem and they don't want to do business under this current government?
Councillor Pryor, please.
I'm delighted that you listened so well to Answers in Full Council last week. We're one of the cities in the UK with the... apologies. So we had a question about this at Full Council last week, where we talked about the number of new businesses opening up in Leeds, and we are one of the highest cities in the UK for new businesses. In fact, in the last few years, we've had a 22.4% increase in business scale-ups. So that's not just new businesses starting in Leeds, that's businesses setting up, being so successful that they're growing. We are the highest core city for that in the UK. We've been ranked by the University of Law as the best city in the UK to grow a business. So that's based on business survival rate, that's based on high growth enterprises, and it's based on employment rates. London didn't even make the top 3 of that. In fact, in 2024, we climbed 12 places on the Global Startup Index, I think really suggesting we've got that momentum with businesses. And actually, you asked earlier about kind of what it means to be the best city and kind of where we are compared to other cities around the UK or the areas around the UK. So between 2019 and 2023, GVA in Leeds was 13.3%. That was more than double what it was in West Yorkshire, more than quadruple what it was for the rest of England. So actually, the economy in Leeds is growing much faster than anywhere else. And actually, in spite of where the economy's been over the past 14 years, I think last year the UK was in recession, and at the same time Leeds was growing.
Thank you. Any more comments on this paper? Councillor Lamb, please.
Last one, if I may. Because I'm not doing very well on getting answers to what I actually asked, but I'll keep going. The final one, I'd be grateful for someone, if someone can help us to understand why sickness levels are so variable across council directorates. In some departments, they're relatively low. In some departments, they're incredibly high, and it would be useful to understand what we're doing right in some directorates and why we're not able to match that in others.
Thank you. Andy, would you like to come in, please?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Yes, you're right. There is quite a large variability between sickness absence and attendance management between different services. That's for a whole variety of different reasons, because obviously our diverse workforce, they are undertaking very different jobs, and therefore that does affect levels of sickness. Also, we recognise that it's a local management issue, so obviously we work with local managers in an according way and support them. There is more work to do on that, as Councillor Cooper has said, and we recognise that sickness is increasing as an organisation, and therefore we do have a range of very specific interventions. Probably the key issue at the moment for us at the moment is to focus very much on those top 10 services, probably the services that you reference in terms of where sickness is particularly high. So we have dedicated support in those areas with teams, HR teams, supporting managers, and particularly giving additional manager training and support in those areas. And also we continue to put investment in our wellbeing offer to support staff when they are unwell. So that support things like occupational health. We obviously have mental health first aiders supporting staff as well. And our focus particularly has also been on the reasons for ill health and long-term sickness. So we do try to adapt our support depending on those areas of high sickness. But it is very much about nature of the workforce and the variability.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor Lamb, please.
No, I just wanted to thank Andy for answering the question I actually asked, which has been quite novel.
I really enjoyed Councillor Rafiq and Councillor Pryor's answers. Thought they were excellent and got straight to the point. Okay, are there any more comments on this paper, please? Or shall we turn to the recommendations on page 194? And is everybody happy with those recommendations? That's great, thank you. Can we move on to item 12, please, Councillor Cooper?
Thank you, Leader. And the next report for me is the Financial Health Monitoring Month 2 report to Executive Board. I just want to start by saying that this is really early in the full year. It's only month 2, and yet we're bringing the report to Executive Board as we have committed to do and will continue to do. The report goes into detail about the financial position of the Council for month 2 and does indicate that we are forecasting an overspend of 19.53 million by the end of the year, which comes from, as will be no surprise to anybody on the Executive Board, the continuing problems that we're seeing on demand and demographics around adults and children's care and that market. So that the report goes into lots of detail. I would just like to point out as well that we have projected to save £103 million worth of savings over the next year, and many of them are all on target. We achieved the majority of our savings targets last year, and some of those that were delayed will still be achieved as we go throughout this year as well. And we also now, because of the projected overspends, as you would imagine, have put forward some points that we need to keep spending tight on. So the vacancy situation around recruitment and so on in the paper that you'll see. I'll leave it there for now, Leader, and wait for questions.
Thank you. Any comments? Councillor Lamb, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's like Groundhog Day, isn't it? And you can imagine the surprise I had when I discovered we were overspending in adults and children's again at the start of the year. I think what residents will want to understand is how in February we set a budget which dramatically increased both the adults and children's budgets to address the anticipated demand pressure, and in May we've suddenly got unanticipated demand pressures, although it's accurate to point out not all of the overspend is because of demand pressures. Some of it is because things that were said would be delivered in year are now not going to be. I do understand some of the issues in adults that have come about. What I'd really like some clarity on in the children's budget is around the external residential placements. I've got some information, but I haven't fully got my head around it, because the whole budget, and the reason I'm asking this is, what I want to know is this 9.2 million, is that a realistic reflection of where we're going to be at the end of the year, or is this likely to get worse as we go on? And the reason I ask that is because the most important thing, both for the benefit of the children and for the budget, is to reduce the number of external placements. And the budget is predicated on us getting down to 77 in a straight line by the end of the year. At the moment, we've gone up by 24. So what I don't understand is this 9.2 million still based on us achieving 77 by the end of the year, which does not look realistic from where we are today, or is that 9.2 million based on the fact we've already accepted we won't get down to 77 places this year?
Julie, please.
Thank you, Leader. I think before I answer Councillor Lamb's specific question, and I will answer your question, Councillor Lamb, I think it is, again, just really important just to highlight the context within which we are trying to support and do our best to support children and families in the city. We've talked to you previously before about we've got more children in the city than we've ever had before. We've got more adolescents in the city than we've ever had before. And those adolescents living in the main, and that growth taking place in the areas of highest deprivation. We know, and research tells us, the correlation between poverty and children experiencing abuse and neglect, and then the need for children to become looked after. Despite this, and this is really, really important to say, we continue to see, and we have a sustained downward trend in terms of the numbers of our children becoming looked after. And that means that actually we are positioned really, really favourably in terms of our other core cities. And I think it is important to highlight that, and that is part of that is around the success of our early intervention and prevention. So we do have less children coming into care, and that is all about effective early help and the increase that we've talked about previously in terms of our family hubs, etc. The 77 and the 9 million are absolutely linked, Councillor Lamb. So yes, that projection is based on us having 77 children in external residential at the end of March next year. Whilst, and this is where I suppose it's nuances and it's the devil's in the detail. So actually, we have seen a reduction, and we do see children being reunified back from our external residential placements as we would want to. So children coming back into Leeds. So as an example, one child who was reunified last year, was an overall cost of £378,000 in terms of a cost reduction. We've had a further 9 children reunified last year, and that would have been a total full year cost of 1.5 million. We've had an increase in our children's homes, so we've gone from 10 children's homes to 18 children's homes, and we'll hopefully be at 24 children's homes by the end of March next year. And all of that increase in our in-house resource is enabling us to bring children back from more costly external residential placements and into Leeds. One of the areas that we do see is placement breakdown. So where we already have children in care, and in the main, these are adolescents who've got the most complex needs. So adolescents who have experienced complex trauma, and really, really early years trauma, and that trauma which has continued to impact on their lives, which means that it can be very, very challenging for us as a system and to meet those children's needs. So we are seeing children who are coming back from external residential care. Unfortunately, what we see is adolescents where there's placement breakdown, who then do require some of that specialist provision. But we're continuing to expand our small group living offer. We are continuing to, we have expanded our reunification team. We're now really focusing on our placement stability team. So, really trying to anticipate where children may be at risk of placement breakdown. We do have our Kirkgate accommodation, which we are now really hopeful that will be up and running at the end of July. That gives us an additional accommodation for an additional 43 young people who will be able to move into independent accommodation and really importantly, high quality accommodation. And what that will do is, and this is where you get the sufficiency picture and the bigger picture and the jigsaw in terms of placements, but that will free up some of, again, our own internal provision, which will enable us to bring children back from costly external placements. So I think, as is detailed and is set out in the financial report, it's a very, very complex situation, but we do have a really, really robust sufficiency strategy, which does set out, our objectives and the outcomes that we want to achieve by the end of the financial year.
Thank you, Julie. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you. My challenge is that nothing in the context and background that you've described was unknown in February when we set the budget, and I'm grateful that you did answer the question, but it's alarming that it sounds to me like this is likely to get worse as the year goes on, because given the target is to get to 77, that is a huge financial implication, and the consequence, it's big numbers that are not easy for people to get their heads round, but that £19.5 million plus, that's services that can't be delivered elsewhere, that's roads that can't be maintained, that's putting massive pressure on all of the other services. It's someone correct me if my maths is wildly out, but I would guess it's around about 15% on people's council tax if you had to generate it that way. It's really concerning that we end up in this place every year. And so my question, are we basing the financial predictions in sound data in the first place? Because there's nothing that's just been described by Julie which is new or surprising from when we set the budget, and yet we're already projecting a 9 million overspend, which I will now be astonished if that isn't worse as the months progress.
Thank you. Julie, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'll come in, and then I know that Victoria wants to come in as well. I think, as we've said here before, and as I've just said, it is a really, really complex picture. We've already, I think, referred to Leeds this afternoon, as being the second biggest local authority in the country. And as I've said, in terms of deprivation, in terms of the level of complexity, this is my 41st year of working with children and families. I think I've worked in the majority of local authorities in the region. I've worked in England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. I've never worked anywhere where I've seen the level of complexity that we have in terms of the children in Leeds. So, the situation does reflect that. Also, the numbers of children that we have in Leeds, around 1,500 children looked after. In some other local authorities, you would be talking, 300, 400. We have around 600 children on a child protection plan. In other local authorities, you might be talking 100, 200. We have more than 3,000 children subject to a child in need plan. There's the scale and the level of deprivation in Leeds, which, is different. And that does add to the complexity. First and foremost, our duty, our statutory duty, is to provide effective help and protection to the children and families of Leeds, and that's got to be our, statutorily, our responsibility. Our sufficiency strategy, I've seen sufficiency strategies right across the country. I've never seen a sufficiency strategy as robust and as detailed and as complex as that which we have in Leeds. The fact that we are, no other local authority is expanding their in-house provision to the rate that Leeds is, not even coming close. So the fact that we are working night and day to enhance our provision, to grow our provision, but also the quality of that provision. It's not just about us having increased provision, it's about us having the quality of provision to meet the needs of our children. But it is complex, but we will continue to do our best. And I'll hand over to Victoria.
Thank you. Victoria, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would also add that we're obviously looking at the medium-term financial strategy now for next year. And we do that throughout the summer, looking at the trends and the forecasts of where we think, from the data that we're getting, that we think the population and the needs of the budgets are. So it starts very early in the year, and we need to do that to ensure that through the autumn we have a provisional budget ready for December Executive Board. We did see changes in trends, especially in adult social care, which was a different trend to what we'd seen historically, which meant that we had seen pressures in the demand budgets for that area, and also the assumptions that were made around income within adults did change because of people hitting the threshold, which was obviously because of the cost of living crisis that we're seeing out there in the communities. So things are changing very quickly, and it's really difficult when you're trying to forecast. We did recognise that the budgets needed to be increased, and that's why there was 49 million investment put in. But obviously that, with hindsight and a crystal ball, should have been bigger, but actually we put in the best estimate that we could do based on the historical information that we had available at that time. There are pressures in both those areas. In adults, I've explained the reason why. In children's, Julie's gone through. There is a phenomenal amount of work going on within the directorates to try and resolve this issue, but we're dealing with complex cases, and it's very difficult to forecast what will happen in the next few months, never mind in 18 months' time. So, and I'd also like to say that every local authority is experiencing the same. This isn't unique to Leeds, this is across nationally, that we recognise that social care is something that all councils are grappling with. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Are there any more comments on this paper? Councillor Cooper, please.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Leader, and thanks for the responses for Councillor Lamb's question. You know, quite rightly asking, you know, what we're doing as an organisation to ensure that those overspend figures, you know, reflect what might be going forward as well. So, you know, I welcome, of course, your interest, you know, in that area, Councillor Hammond. I'm more than happy to meet you, you know, in between executive boards to talk through any concerns that you have about those finances as well. But as directors and Victoria have said, you know, there's an awful lot of work going on to work on reducing that figure going forward. And Julie went particularly into the detail of how we hope to reduce external placements going forward, which should have, you know, the knock-on impact in terms of the finances as well. But very much welcome your input on that one. One of the reasons why we do look to some of the non-statutory areas to make savings in the children and families directorate, you know, because we do know that you know, there is a need to spend the money on the looked after children side of things as well. So just to say, make that point as well. But yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. If there's no more comments on this paper, I'll turn to the recommendations on page 246. I take it everybody is happy with those recommendations. And Councillor Lamb is heading off now, and Councillor Buckley's joining us at the meeting table now. So we'll just pause a moment for Councillor Buckley to come to the table, and then we'll start on item 13, please, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Leader. And the second of the financial reports for me today is the capital programme quarterly update. We set the capital programme back in February, and this is just bringing an update to Executive Board with some of the minor changes that are needed at this point in time. I'll leave it there for any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments on this paper? Councillor Buckley, please.
Thank you.
Just one question, actually. Will there be a risk of the national insurance increase contribution from the government not being met, not meeting the full cost of the increase? And have you heard anything to confirm yes or no from the government?
Sorry, Councillor Buckley, are you speaking on the capital programme financial paper?
Yes.
You are. Okay, Victoria, do you want to? I don't see how it's relevant on the capital programme, but Victoria.
We've had notification of what the government were funding for the national insurance contribution, and that's been incorporated into the financial health, which is the revenue monitoring report. On the capital programme, there aren't implications for the national insurance contribution for the council employed staff. There might be for suppliers and contractors, but I don't think there's going to be any further announcement made on the national insurance contributions. I think we've had all the announcements that we're going to have today. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Are there any more comments on this paper, please? Okay, I'll turn to the recommendations on page 299. To take it, everybody's happy with those. That's great, thank you. If we can move on to item 14, please, Councillor Cooper.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And this is an update on the progress that we're making on our core business transformation programme. The report goes into detail on what we're hoping to achieve, what we have achieved, and just a few of the milestones, I suppose, to point out for exec board members here. That the finance team launched their new finance system to 2,000 users as planned in June. The HR payroll team launched a new recruit and HR payroll system between April and June, which included delivering self-service to over 30,000 users, including all of our frontline staff, which was a remarkable feat, I have to say. The procurement team have now started to design the new procurement and contract management system and are on track to launch in September. There's much more detail in the report about all of the good work and the ambitions around it. I expect exec board members have already read that, so I'll leave it there. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this paper? Councillor Buckley, please.
Thank you. The private sector could save some money here. I'm thinking of AI in particular. A little while ago, this piece of paper was partly typed by me, and I scribbled all over it, some in capitals and some in writing, and I didn't do it, but somebody got AI to convert it instantly into a typed piece of paper. And this is the kind of thing that we should surely be embracing fully. And we're constantly told, I've had this to me, and I know others in our group have, by private sector partners, that Leeds is very happy to go down the in-house route. When they're asked what they're doing for other councils in various capacities, they mention they're doing this here and that there and so forth. And then you say, well, what about Leeds? And they say, oh, well, they're content to go down the in-house route. And I just wondered whether anybody would like to comment on that. Strategy and resources seem to be more progressive in this matter, but is it ideology or what?
Thank you. There's quite a few questions there. Do we have frontline workers who are paid on terms and conditions agreed with collective bargaining with the unions and with good terms and conditions? Yes, we do. If you consider that ideology, that often applies in this council. Certainly the financial management system that this replaces was one that was developed in-house back in the 1990s, and I'm sure officers will pick up the story about where we are today. Who's going to come in, please? Victoria, please.
So I'll come in on the core business transformation and then bring Andy in on AI, if that's okay. So these solutions that we've now got for the core business aren't in-house. They're actually solutions that are used across nationally. Other local authorities use them. We've recognised, so we've got MHR, which is iTrent, which the majority of councils do use that for the payroll, HR systems. My budget is Microsoft Dynamics, and we've recognised that through the technology is moving so quickly that we do need to be at the forefront, and therefore we've looked for those solutions and the investment that the private sector can put into those solutions when they're dealing with a lot of other local authorities means that investment is a lot more than we could do individually within the council, and that's why we've gone for the solutions that are available. And also it gives us access to skills that would be available nationally for the development and the continuous improvement of those solutions. And that's why we moved away from FMS, which was an in-house solution, as Councillor Lewis has said, and developed into this solution that's on a national scale. I don't know, Andy, do you want to come in on the AI? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Very happy to give you an update, Councillor Buckley, on our work of AI. So we do have a officer steering group across the organisation looking at AI, and we are piloting it right across the organisation. So it is within stretching resources, as you rightly say, but we also have pilots elsewhere. So we've got pilots of AI in adult social care, and only this week on Monday we did a workshop in the City Development Directorate with Microsoft, looking at its potential application across their services. So we are excited about the efficiencies that AI can bring across the organisation, but also are mindful of the costs as well. So we are piloting it, but doing it within a strong governance arrangement with the steering group.
Thank you, Andy. Are there any more comments on this paper? If there's not, I'll turn to the recommendations on page 312, and I take it everybody is happy with those recommendations, and if we can move on to item 15, please, Councillor Cooper.
So, Exec Board members will be pleased to hear this is my last report this afternoon, and this is item 15 on community asset transfer of Vickers Court to Health for All. So the report proposes that we make this community asset transfer to Health for All of the Vickers Court in Allerton Bywater, and it sets out how we'll be able to do that. So we've already brought a community asset transfer policy to Executive Board that we discussed and approved. This was one of the buildings identified within that report, and the right set of circumstances have meant that we're able to really provide a route forward for this council asset to remain within the community and for the use of the community, and for Health for All to be able to run it for that community. There is a confidential item that I would like to speak more on when we get to that point, Leader, but I do know that this is within your ward and Councillor Harlan's ward, and I know that you are very pleased to see this come forward as well. So I'll leave it there. Thanks, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Harland.
Yeah, thank you, Debbie. I'd just like to note thanks for everybody that's been involved in finally getting this over the line. It's a really great community asset, and the community trustees and everybody are just raring to go. So thanks for everybody that's concerned.
Thank you, Councillor Harland. Any more comments on this paper? Councillor Buckley, please.
Yeah, thank you. We would generally support these schemes where they're supported by the local members, and in this case we have every confidence in the judgment of the local members. So as long as in the fullness of time, when we support schemes, if it could be reciprocated, that would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. I think it's worth saying on this centre as well, it, as it says in the papers, it was a school building. It was converted using coalfield regeneration money about 25 years ago into a community centre which was run by a charity. Unfortunately, that even though in 2019 and early 2020 it was a really successful community centre, unfortunately the charity didn't survive COVID, and it has been brought back to use as a community centre. Our excellent judgment, which you've nicest thing you've ever said to me, Councillor Buckley, is based on the fact it was actually a thriving community centre before the COVID lockdown. So very much the proof that it is wanted and needed by the community was there beforehand. Councillor Cooper, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I think just to respond to Councillor Buckley's comment there, that actually this follows a policy of Executive Board, as I mentioned in my introduction, where we identified a criteria for community asset transfers that would be suitable for us as a council to make to third parties where it was relevant and appropriate to do so. Not all buildings that Leeds City Council own and the assets that we have are suitable for a community asset transfer. So whilst I recognise Councillor Buckley's support in this instance, we can always just reciprocate that if the building's not appropriate for use within the criteria that's set within the policy. And we do have to make note of actually the capital receipts that we need to make to ensure that we can maintain our budget going forward and pay for our frontline services that we need to do so with it, that's set within our budget as well. So thank you, Leader.
Thank you. I don't see somebody else wanted to come in, so I'm going to move to the recommendations on page 351, and I take it everybody is happy with those recommendations. That's great, thank you. So we'll move on to item 16, please, Councillor Pryor.
Thank you, Leader. So this is the acquisition of 83 to 88-89 Kirkgate, and an update on that. So Lower Kirkgate is one of the oldest streets in Leeds and one we're really keen to see celebrated. Obviously the situation on Lower Kirkgate is a complex one and clearly remains a major source of frustration and concern for local residents and businesses. So this report sets out some of the recent history and the context, the Council's regeneration ambition for the street and the Council's current position in light of a collapse of one of the properties with proposed options to deliver on the redevelopment vision for the area. At the moment in time, it's important to note that the at-risk buildings are not owned by the council, but we are, of course, acutely aware of the need to protect the 18th and 19th century fabric of the street. With 83 to 88-89 Kirkgate remaining in private ownership and in a damaged and deteriorating condition, and with no agreement reached with the owner to acquire the properties, the report proposes assessing alternative methods to acquire the properties if both parties are unable to reach agreement, including exploring the council's powers and position to compulsorily acquire the properties. Any formal decision or resolution on the use of the compulsory purchase powers would be reserved until a future and as yet unspecified meeting of the Executive Board. The report also confirms that the Council hopes to be in a position to complete its 16-week programme of stabilisation work on the buildings by the end of this year. I shall leave it there for introductory remarks.
Thank you, Councillor Pryor. Are there any comments? Councillor Buckley, please.
Well, we're supportive of this because money needs to be made and profits need to be made about in all sorts of ways. If it's not, we'll all starve ultimately. But the owners of these buildings have not covered themselves in glory for the last 10 or 15 years. The other businesses around them have suffered, and the dereliction is very bad. I walked down there the other week, and although it's better than it was a few years ago, it's really a tragic sight. And it could be a spectacular street, in my view. So we support the council's intention of, if necessary, a compulsory purchase order. But we would further urge that this is done quickly without further delays, and would just press you on a date by which you wish to conclude this process.
Thank you. Do you want to come back, Councillor Pryor, or Nikki, would you like to come in, please?
I can come back to you on the compulsory purchase issue. You're quite right, Councillor Buckley. This area has been subject to a lot of intervention by Leeds City Council in an interest to bring it along and develop it, given its importance. But there has been an urgent works notice served on the land, and that needs to now take its course, and we're going to stabilise that land. Hopefully, all the owner will step in and continue with the obligations that are required under that notice. With the CPO, it's quite a complicated process because we're interfering with third-party rights, essentially, and we need to justify that to the Secretary of State in order for him or her to confirm that order. So there's quite a lot of work that needs to be undertaken by not only the council but also the local planning authority in terms of what it will look like in the future in order for us to meet the thresholds to interfere with someone else's land. So we can note those comments and take that forward, but this is a highly complex site with complex engineering works, and it's in a conservation area as well, so we've got to be mindful of that. What I would say is the Secretary of State did confirm that we could issue that urgent works notice, which does sort of indicate the severity and the importance of the area.
Thank you. Are there any more comments, please? I don't see anybody else wanting to come in, so I'll turn to the recommendations on page 378. Take it everybody is happy with those recommendations. Thank you. And we're now on to your paper, Councillor Venner, item 17.
Thank you. Have we got everyone here? Yeah. Thank you. I'm delighted to introduce the annual report on equality, diversity and inclusion. It represents the end of the current 4-year cycle of priorities, and the report includes the achievements of each directorate and their priorities for the next year. It also includes an update on our EDI vision and action plan, an update on our zero tolerance statement, and an update on our workforce EDI plan, and it has been to scrutiny. I'm very delighted that after the care leavers deputation last year, we did pass a resolution at Exec Board to recognise care experience as a protected characteristic. So in next year's report, that will be more of a feature in terms of the work directorates have done to embed that. So we will expect to see more about that great step forward in the next annual report. I'd also like to make the point that I'm bringing this report in the context of both national and international attacks on EDI work, when people are even questioning that equality is something that should be strived for. We've got a rise in misogyny, we've had staff sacked for EDI roles in America, threats for that to happen in this country from reform-led councils. And in our view, the best way to combat the attacks on EDI is to do outstanding EDI work. And this report outlines how we do that, from the disability inclusive Leeds work that I'm very proud to lead politically, marking key events. We've just had Remembering Srebrenica last week, we've got Pride this weekend, to the work in services to ensure equity of access and experience for everyone. And we have a really thriving network of staff networks where we have a staff network for every protected characteristic, including care experience, which is co-chaired by 2 care experience staff. Each staff network has an SLT link, and the staff networks meet regularly with our Chief Executive, reflecting and symbolising that EDI is supported at all levels of the Council. So I'm very proud to bring this report. I'd like to thank the very tiny equality team for the incredible work that they do, with not very many of them, but have a huge reach and a huge impact on people's lives and people's experience of both our Council and our city. And I'm very happy to take questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Venner. Are there any comments on this report? Councillor Buckley, please.
Just a question or two, please. How many cases of grievances have we had in the last year, and how many have been upheld? How do we compare with other cities in this regard, and how do we compare with the private sector?
Thank you. Andy, would you like to make a start, please?
Yeah, I'll make a start with that. Thank you, Councillor Buckley. We do have some cases of grievances that do relate to discrimination, as you would expect in the size of our organisation. However, they are thankfully very few and far between. I can certainly find out the very specific figures that you've asked for, so I don't want to misquote you today. It's also quite difficult to compare with other organisations. We do a bit of work with our anchor organisations within the city in terms of sharing good practice, but I can have a look at those figures for you and provide them separately.
Thank you. Councillor Venner, please.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to that. Regarding the staff networks that I spoke about, they're a really important part of our work around equality and around being a good employer. They provide peer support, they provide development, they provide a way for people to feel that our organisation is a safe and inclusive place to be. To give an example of the Care Experience Network, it was a request of our Care Leavers Council at the Corporate Parenting Board takeover last year that we employ more Care Experience staff, and publicly having a Care Experience Network is a way of us signalling that we welcome people of care experience, that we have a peer support network for them, that they're welcome in our organisation, and that we will be a great place for people to have a career. We also have a Freedom to Speak Up Guardian. We were the first council in the country to do this. This is a really common practice in the NHS, but not in local authorities. So although it's inevitable, as Andy said, that we will have some grievances in an organisation of this size, and some of them will be related to issues around discrimination, we also have a number of mechanisms in place to ensure that staff from protected characteristic groups have a positive experience of being employed here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, please.
Yeah, can I just add to what Councillor Venner set out there as well? We also have our partnership working that we do across the anchor networks, and also with our trade union colleagues who we meet on a regular basis to take issues up that their members may well be raising with them as well. I think the point that Councillor Venner made about the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian is an excellent one, because it gives us that independence for any member of staff to be able to contact that guardian to go through their concerns and have them raised in a way that doesn't always need to identify the person, and therefore they get some coverage from being the person that's raising an issue within a department as well. It's a really important piece of work. It's shown over a couple of years now. I'm trying to think when we started with The Guardian, but it is 2 or 3 years since that we've done that work, and I think that her annual report to us as well shows the breadth and the variety of work that she's undertaken. So I just wanted to make that point, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions or comments on this paper? I don't see anybody else indicating, so I'm going to turn to the recommendations on page 402, and I take it everybody is happy with those recommendations. That's great, thank you. So that brings us to the end of the public section of the meeting. So I shall close the meeting here for this bit of the meeting. We're going to move into the private session for the 3 items that have exempt paper. So thank everybody for coming, and ask everybody who